tonight's Planning Commission meeting of Monday, September 22nd, 2025. Christina, would you please call the roll?
Chair Mitchell,
Here.
Commissioner Moreno,
Here.
Guinea,
Here.
Sly,
Here.
Ewing, and Bruce,
Here.
and Vice Chair Najak is absent today.
Thank you. Item number 3 on tonight's agenda is public comment. The purpose of public comment is to allow community members to raise an issue regarding items not on the agenda. Christina, do we have anyone in here or on Zoom that would like to raise an issue not on tonight's agenda?
None today.
Thank you. Item number 4 on tonight's agenda, the Commission for Citizen Involvement General Updates. I don't think we had any additional updates tonight that I saw, so that will take us on to the next item on the agenda, which is 5.1. This has to do with the finding conclusions in order from the Fair Housing Policy and Education. This is LU 25-0001. At our last meeting on September 8th, the Planning Commission issued a preliminary recommendation for City Council to approve the proposed comprehensive plan amendment and directed staff to return the draft findings, conclusions in order. The draft was distributed to earlier to the commissioners. So I'll open it up to the commissioners on if there were any comments, questions, or anything else related to the draft findings. I have some head nods, no?
No.
Okay, I think then we need a motion.
Motion to approve as presented.
Okay, I think there was a motion, and then I think I heard Commissioner Twang say second. And then I guess we have to do individual votes on this one, Christina, because we need a majority. I guess let's do individual votes.
Okay. Mitchell,
Yes.
Moreno,
Yes.
Guinea,
Yes.
Sly,
Yes.
Ewing,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
6-0.
Okay, thank you. That will bring us on to item number 6.1 on tonight's agenda. This is work session number 2 for the rezoning for housing. This is PP 25-0001, and we're going to receive an overview and introduction to the rezoning for housing project, which is one of the strategies identified in the city's housing production strategy. I'll turn it over to Staff Coordinator Michael.
Thank you. All right, so good evening. I'm here to discuss the upcoming rezoning for housing project, which will examine the city's mixed-use commercial and non-residential zones for their potential to accommodate more housing. You previously talked with Erik Olson about this project as part of a discussion on the city's housing production strategy in May. In this presentation, I'll discuss the background of the project and its purpose, talk about the project team, give you an overview of the anticipated process and schedule, and then open things up for questions and discussion. In particular, we're interested in feedback the Commission might have on the proposed methodology or flow of the project. So, first, let's talk about where this project is coming from. The city adopted a housing needs analysis, or HNA, in accordance with state law in 2023. This analysis looked at the city's 20-year housing needs and tried to determine if there was enough land in the city to meet those needs. The results of the HNA were then used to create a housing production strategy, also in accordance with state law. The housing needs analysis identified a need to produce almost 2,000 housing units for the period from 2023 to 2043. Importantly, it also found that under the city's existing zoning map and ordinance, there wasn't enough capacity to meet that demand. The HNA determined there was a deficit in capacity of about 640 units under the city's existing zoning rules. Without changing the zoning capacity of our existing incorporated land, the analysis found the city would need to add at least 86 acres of land to accommodate the demand through 2043. The city adopted a housing production strategy, or HPS, in 2024. It identifies the work the city is committed to doing to fill the housing needs and gaps identified in the HNA. Let me make sure we're, okay, yes, sorry about that. It also serves as a work plan for the city's housing efforts over the next 8 years. The state of Oregon holds the city accountable for implementing or making progress in implementing all strategies adopted in the HPS. One of the 13 strategies identified in the HPS is to increase housing capacity of land within the city's boundaries through rezoning. The HPS breaks the strategy into phases, beginning with non-residential and mixed-use land before moving to residentially zoned land. The strategy identified in the HPS involves rezoning commercial or other non-residentially zoned properties to allow for housing development in those areas, especially multifamily housing. It could also involve rezoning lower density areas to allow for higher density housing. This strategy addresses the fact that the city faces a shortage of residential land across all zones to meet housing needs. It prioritizes rezoning in areas with the greatest potential for higher density multifamily housing, including areas where non-residential uses are underutilized. As mentioned, the city is using a phased approach that begins with non-residential, mixed-use, and commercial zones before possibly looking at upzoning lower density residential areas in a later phase. Based on recent feedback from the City Council at a study session earlier this month, the second phase may be deprioritized, and the city may try to focus on getting the zoning capacity we need from the non-residential areas. The objective of the rezoning for housing project is to identify commercial, mixed-use, or non-residential areas that could allow for more housing. From there, several rezone alternatives will be developed for each focus area. The final stage of the project would be to adopt zoning map and comprehensive plan amendments and zoning text amendments if needed. This map shows where the city's mixed-use and non-residential zones are located. You can see there are clusters along Cruz Way, and I don't think I have a way to use my cursor, but okay, thank you. Ooh, okay, so you can see there are clusters along Cruz Way, in Lake Grove along Boone's Ferry, in First Edition Evergreen, at the former Merrillhurst University campus in what is now called Mary's Woods, and in the industrial zoned area in the southwest corner of the city along Boone's Ferry Road, which will likely not be an area of focus because it's not appropriate for residential use. Foothills, the area between State Street and the Willamette River, north of Old Town, is also zoned mixed use or non-residential, but that neighborhood will be examined on its own as part of a separate redevelopment effort. To help the city with some of the technical aspects of the project, along with some of the community engagement, staff have applied for a grant under the Housing Planning Assistance Grant Program from the State Department of Land Conservation and Development. The program is structured so that DLCD can provide the consultant directly, rather than the city having to put out a request for proposals, although the city does still have the option to hire our own consultant using the grant funding. The city asked for a grant in the amount of $210,000 with a DLCD-provided consultant, and DLCD has indicated they will announce their decision in October. The project team will consist of myself, Michael McNamee, as the primary project manager, along with Erik Olson, long-range planning manager, and Jessica Numanolu, community development director. Assuming we are awarded the DLCD grant, a consultant would be selected in fall 2025 for a project kickoff in early 2026. The project will be conducted in several steps, with the ultimate goal of drafting and adopting zoning map, comprehensive plan, and CDC amendments as needed to increase the capacity to build housing in select focus areas. Project kickoff will involve getting the consultant up to speed on the project and drafting a public involvement strategy. From there, we'll create a rezoning background report, the purpose of which will be to assess existing conditions and lay the groundwork for identifying focus areas. Building on that report, the project team will create a rezoning opportunities and constraints summary map and paper, which will identify groups of redevelopable parcels and potential focus areas for rezoning. After the focus areas have been identified, the project team will analyze the potential for new development and identify zoning concepts to increase density where appropriate, which will be put together with draft rezoning recommendations in the focus areas alternatives report. From there, zoning map amendments will be prepared along with comprehensive plan and CDC text amendments as needed, after which they will be put forth to the Planning Commission and City Council for potential adoption. The Planning Commission and City Council will be briefed at key junctures throughout the project, which will also provide opportunities for feedback. This is the tentative schedule for the project. The DLCD grant runs through the state's biennium, which ends in June 2027. So the city's goal is to complete all of the consultant work by then. The project is projected to kick off in January 2026, with the rezoning background report done in April and the rezoning opportunities and constraints summary map and paper finished in July. After that, the focus areas alternative report is planned to be finished by January 2027, with a first draft completed by September 2026 and a second draft in November 2026. Draft amendments are planned to be completed by April 2027, with a target date for adoption of September 2027. So next steps, DLCD should give us a decision on the grant in October. After that, consultant selection and a contract with DLCD will follow. As mentioned, the project is planned to begin in early 2026. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or participate in any discussion at this time.
Thank you, Michael. I'll steal it and ask a quick question. The city council said that we should focus on the non-residential areas first, right? And deprioritize like lower density residential areas, or maybe even wipe it off. Could you talk a little bit about the city's council's reasoning for why they wanted to focus on the non-residential areas first?
I think they just know that that's politically not a very viable proposal. I think a lot of folks would be opposed to that. And given that our deficit is, 600 and, what is it, 640 units?
Yeah.
Or 627 units, I might have had that, it's around 600. That's not a ton. So what we're hoping is that if we can accommodate those within our mixed use and commercial areas, then we won't have to approach the zoning of a rezoning or upzoning of residentially zoned properties. If we do, I can assure you that we would first focus on higher density before going into lower density. But because it's not a lot, we're pretty optimistic, especially if we get to consider the foothills area, which would be rezoned to allow additional housing, that we should be able to meet those needs without having to resort to going to the pure residential zones.
Okay, thank you.
So how would it actually look if I'm a landowner that owns land in a commercially zoned district, and it gets, rezoned to the new standards? Would the landowner be forced to sell, or would they then be able to sell off once it's been rezoned for that new use? Is that how that would work?
Want to answer? You want me to?
Sure. I try to answer. So rezoning would not force a property owner to sell. It would just change what could be done with that property. Before any rezoning happened, there would be hopefully a pretty involved public engagement process. We're still fleshing that out. But it doesn't force a property owner to do anything. We have laws that allow people to continue if, for example, a use or a building became non-conforming. Our zoning laws allow those to continue. And so, yeah, there isn't a need to do anything once your property is rezoned. It just has the potential to do some different things.
Right, we're required to add the capacity. Obviously, we can't force anyone to build the actual housing. We would hope that they would if we make it easier and and it's allowed to do that. Actually, this commission will have a public hearing next month on a rezone, and this is a great example of sort of low-hanging fruit. It's a property on Cruiseway Place. It is currently zoned office commercial, and they want to rezone it to high-density residential. And the reason is because the office commercial actually allows residential, but it allows it at such a small maximum floor area ratio that it doesn't make it really practicable. It's a very kind of suburban style density with surface parking, low buildings that just doesn't accommodate high-density residential zoning. So that's the kind of rezoning that we would look to first, is maybe residential is already allowed there, but there are barriers in certain zone standards that actually prevent any meaningful residential development from happening. So commercial would still be allowed. In this case, it wouldn't because they're going to R0, but in other zones, if we did the same thing, we would probably keep the same zoning, but we would change the standards and so that it would allow for more accommodation of mixed use. Another example is we have a zone called mixed commerce. Could you go to that map? And if you're familiar, it's out in the Cruiseway area. It's that light blue area. Yep, right there. That actually does not allow any residential use today. And that is a possibility if we could allow that. There's a lot of surface parking lots that are in that area that are underutilized. So that could be ripe for for a redevelopment and potential mixed use. So I do think there are some opportunities out there. But, again, we'll need to study. I'm not saying this is definitely going to happen, but those are the types of things that are definitely opportunities for us to look at.
Is the aim here low-cost housing? Is that the aim?
Well, we need housing of all income types, but low income or lower cost housing is of a higher need, because I think if we let things go as they are, we don't have a problem with high-end housing. That seems to be getting built. So if you're opening up opportunities in high-density areas, those are going to be lower-cost housing just because they're going to be of higher density.
Isn't one of the goals here, though?
Yeah, it is one of the goals. But this is getting out specifically increasing housing capacity. But again, by encouraging higher density housing, that is also addressing indirectly the cost issue as well.
I guess, let me think about how to ask this question. Are we talking about any vacant lots that are just zoned for like something other than residential, or is everything here that would be identified when we got there, like have an office building on it, have retail on it, have already existing commercial or non-residential structures?
Well, when we're looking at this first phase, it's only commercial and mixed-use zones. Are there some out there that are vacant? I don't think there's a lot out there, but I can think of one that's in the MC zoned area that's a park. Well, it's not vacant. It has a parking lot on it, but it has no building. But yeah, I don't know that there's a lot of vacant commercial land out there, but there is some. But again, the whole purpose of this is for us to do a study, find what our focus areas are, and then come up with alternatives for those focus areas. So that will be part of the process in identifying which areas are, I guess, the most suitable for rezoning.
Yeah, I understand the point of this exercise and what we're sort of tasked with doing. And then I think also what we're required to do, which is create the capacity. To your point, we can't make people do anything. But I'd say if the goal is at the end of the day to try to get more housing, and we're talking about land that already has commercial, like things that need to be knocked down and residential needs to be built on top of it, just thinking about, and again, recognize it's beyond the task of what's currently in front of us, but like what is the plan for incentivizing these landowners to then like knock down the commercial buildings and build some residential? Because that's ultimately what we want to do at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I think if you're providing more options, that increases the value of it being valuable for ripe for redevelopment. Because this Cruiseway Place site, we had a number of inquiries for people wanting to build multifamily, and they couldn't because there isn't it isn't zoned for that. So there was definitely a lot of interest in it, but nobody could do it. So I think opening it up kind of provides that incentive. But we're also doing other work, like for instance, our code audit is coming up. That's something that I can tell you that we heard from Metro that we are getting a recommendation from the staff that to approve the city's grant for that project. Of course, the Metro Council has the final say in it, and so we won't know for sure until the end of next month. But assuming that project goes forward, one of the things that we're going to look at is removing barriers to housing as well. So anything that you can do to remove uncertainty and the time it takes to get the land use approvals is going to help folks develop. But there's also things that are outside of our control, like the current economy and financing, which
Right.
I think is probably the bigger issue if I'm being perfectly honest.
I think just a comment, we're talking about trade-offs here. Economic vitality of land for businesses, and we're trading it for housing, and not as serious as some conversations at the state level with exclusive farm use land or industrial land, or like once those zonings change, they don't come back. But a city like Lake Oswego that is essentially landlocked, like we're not going to be annexing in urban reserves or rural reserves to create more land for housing or businesses or things like that. I will be interested when it gets to the study phase and the public engagement to hear from the Chamber of Commerce, the business associations, even our city municipal government on, just the amount of vacancies that are open right now. There are local businesses that can't hire but for a lack of housing. And even within the city, I think when I first moved to Lake Oswego, one of the first things I did was arrange to go on a ride-along with local law enforcement, because that's one of the best ways you can learn your community. And talking to the leadership right here in this building, how many officers actually live in Lake Oswego that work here, and all of those kind of conversations. And so I'll be very interested to see how this goes forward, and especially the different groups that come in and talk about this.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the items in our HPS that we needed to, that was noted we need to look out for is if we're going to rezone to allow more residential use, we need to make sure we still have adequate land available for employment, commercial, industrial needs, because we need those for a vibrant city too. So that will be a really important consideration. But again, I think with the foothills being rezoned, that is going to add a pretty significant amount of capacity that we can count towards that deficit, and that relieves some of the pressure on some of the other areas. And the idea is not to replace. I think the rezoning application you're going to see is actually going to go from a commercial to a residential zone. But I think that what we're going to be looking at is kind of keeping that mixed use to allow both residential and commercial uses in those zones.
I just wanted to kind of follow up on Commissioner Twing's question there about, will the city employ strategies to encourage affordable, diverse housing that goes in, or will it just be free for all and can be market-based? Because if it's market-based, it seems like things are going to be expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to, nobody's going to build affordable housing with a capital A without subsidies and assistance. And one of our strategies is to keep looking into public-private partnerships with the city, and there's different strategies that we can employ. In the Foothills District, we can use the tax increment financing to use part of those funds to assure that when it's redeveloped that it includes affordable housings, again, with a capital A, like actual income-restricted housing. And we have other strategies, like we provide tax exemptions for certain developments. We have these other incentives that these types of low-income housing can use. But yeah, it's not going to happen on its own. So rezoning is just one aspect. And then in terms of the other strategies for encouraging low-income housing, those are also included in our housing production strategy. So they're all working together, but this is just one phase of the 13 strategies that we have in our housing production strategy report.
Is there a plan B if the grant does not come through, or are we just going to pay the money out of pocket that we're just going to go to the consulting, or?
Yeah, if the grant doesn't come through, then we're going to have to look at trying to do this with our own staff resources, which will be quite difficult because we have so many state mandates and so many other projects that we're committed to for the housing production strategy. Not to mention, and I encourage you, if you can look at this video for the council study session on September 16th, we provided a pretty comprehensive overview of just the last legislative session and the additional work that our department is going to have to do based on HB 2138 alone that was just passed. So if the plan B is that we'll have to reconvene and try to figure out we may have to scale it down, but ultimately we are committed to have to do this. So we'll have to find a way, but it'll probably be scaled back significantly because we don't have all the resources we need for the scope that we have outlined in the grant that we requested from DLCD.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, and there isn't really anything that we were asking you today other than to kind of familiarize you with this project. We're hoping that we get the grant and we're going to move forward. There's a lot of updates, and I've said this before, that you've been getting. We have so many projects that are just getting started or about to get started, so things are going to get real busy for you, but we just want to keep you in the loop, keep this top of mind, because these things will be coming up to you in the coming months, and there'll be lots of work for you all. So, appreciate your questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Jessica. Okay, that brings us to item number 7 on tonight's agenda, other business. No other business. Item 8, schedule review. Are we doing schedule review without Erik?
Yep, Erik is out for some much deserved time off, but he'll be back at your next meeting. I do want to just update you on your next 2 meetings. The meeting on October 13th is actually canceled, so you get a little bit of a break. So no meeting on October 13th. October 27th, you have 2 items on your agenda. The first is going to be a study session with our current long-range planning, our current planning manager, Johanna Hasty. She is going to give an update on Senate Bill 1537, which is actually from the 2024 legislative session. And this is a bill that required cities to approve up to 10 adjustments to city standards, or what we call variances to city standards for housing applications that meet certain criteria. The only rigorous criterion is that you have to meet a minimum density requirement, but other than that, it's just pretty much if you meet the minimum density requirement and you state that it's going to make housing less expensive or some other, or affordable or et cetera, they'll essentially allow you to have up to 10 variances to our zoning standards. The City Council did direct staff to apply for an exemption, and the city, the state allows exemptions if the cities can show that they have a process through their local code that allows those same exemptions that are listed in state law. So we actually ended up getting approval of that exemption through the state, which we thought was going to be good news, but actually results in, again, more work and more conditions of approval. And there were actually 3 adjustments that we didn't qualify for, so we got some direction from the City Council. So essentially, Ms. Hasty is going to give you all an update on that. She'll provide the details. And it's just good for you to know this, because these are the things that we have to keep in mind as we're doing all the other work that we're working on, because it will have implications. So she'll be talking to you about that at the study session. And then the other item, as I mentioned, is the public hearing on a zone change. So this is an actual public hearing, and you will be considering a zone change at Cruiseway Place and make a recommendation to the City Council. The only other update that I would provide you, I'm not sure if Erik sent you an email on this, but we recently hired a new municipal court judge, and that changes the court schedule a little bit. It used to be on Mondays, and they've changed the court dates to Wednesday. So that has a little bit of an impact on your schedule, in that when you had a planning commission meeting on a Monday that fell on a holiday, we automatically just reverted to a Wednesday meeting on that same week. Because that conflicts with the court date, we're actually going to change that to a Thursday meeting going forward. It really only happens a handful of times per year. It's usually in, like MLK Day, President's Day. Those are usually when it comes up. So I think for the Planning Commission, it's only going to come up a couple of times next year. But just be aware of that, where we normally would have met on a Wednesday, when your meeting fell on a holiday, it will now be a Thursday. But we'll remind you as we get closer to that. But I think that's all the updates I have for you.
Great, thank you. And unless anyone else has any other comments or questions or thoughts, adjourned.